So, welcome to the Slice of Time Street Photography podcast. It's the 17th episode already, so I'm very happy with that. Today I'm joined by Tom Pitts, a street photographer from Cheltenham in the UK. I hope I pronounced Cheltenham
Yeah, it's
in
pretty
the
good.
UK. A photographer who is excellent at spotting the right moments and capturing them. And to prove that point, a photo of his recently won the Dublin Street Photography Festival. So that's kind of like proving the point that he's at least very good at, if not great, at capturing these moments. So, hey, Tom, could you introduce yourself for a second?
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for inviting me on. Fred. So I'm Tom Pitts. I suppose, street and documentary photographer from Cheltenham in the UK. Um, I've been kind of taking street-based pictures probably last 3 years, I'd say. And before then, I got into photography more from travel because I lived overseas for a long time, for about 15 years. So I was living outside the UK. Got into photography from travel, and then over the last few years, I've gone deep into kind of street and documentary based work. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on. But that's me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's I find it often that travel is like a good spot for photographers to start. Um, and so what got you into documentary and street photography? It's kind of it's similar style, similar genres, but also different. But yeah, we can
Yeah,
get
so I
into it.
suppose that I started out because I was living in the Middle East for a long time, and that's why I'm kind of when you get to know me, I'm quite an international family. So I have an Australian wife who's from Italian background. We met in Dubai like in 2007, and then we ended up staying a long time in the Middle East, and we only moved back to the UK in 2020. It initially picked up a camera just to more document traveling to places. So we're going to quite a lot of interesting places like Japan and Nepal and places like that, just the two of us traveling. And so I wanted to be able to record what I was seeing. And so first picked up a digital SLR doing stuff like that, like an old Nikon, I think D8 10 or 50. So I was doing that for a while, but it was only because in the Middle East they got very strict privacy laws. You can't really take street photos in there.
Okay,
So if you take a picture of someone on the street and they report you to the police, you could get arrested for taking someone's image in the Middle East. So you tend to find people take pictures of things there, or architecture, or landscape, or stuff like that. You don't get really street documentary based work in the Middle East, particularly. And so when I moved back to the UK, just in time for the COVID pandemic, when I when I moved back,
great timing. Yeah.
yeah, in 2020. That ended, but during the COVID pandemic, that's when I started really finding stuff on YouTube and other platforms where I was like, oh, okay, there's different styles of photography that I wasn't really fully aware of. But up until then, it was more like Steve McCurry or National Geographic type stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so after the pandemic ended, I bought myself a Fuji X Pro 3, and away I went from there at the time. So that's kind of when I went into it. And yeah, it's a really uh, interesting place to go into because yeah, it's so spontaneous, I suppose, compared to other things. You never know what you're going to get. So London was a nice place to start with it, and then I now live in what's a relatively small town in the UK. It's only about 100,000 people who live in the town I'm in, and we're a couple of hours from London. But interestingly, one of the things I found is you don't necessarily have to go to somewhere like London to take interesting pictures. You can do it kind of anywhere. And it took me a while to get to that level of understanding around it, but that's kind of where I got to today. So yeah, so really only the last 3 years or so has been like kind of proper street and documentary based stuff for sure.
Okay, cool. And did you like? Was it because you mentioned those privacy laws, so you already were like into street photography more or less at that point, but couldn't practice it, or was
Yeah,
it?
I don't think I'd really discovered it, to be honest. It was because and this is one of those things where I think I was still in the Middle East. I wasn't even really using Instagram much at the time or anything, or so I was aware of some work like a Martin Parr, for example, in the UK, or a Matt Stewart, some very big names. But the scene around street photography, or like people who you'd be aware of if you're into street photography, I just wasn't aware of any of it, really. It was only over the last 3 years that I've kind of discovered the world, if you like, of street and documentary photography. And subsequently, I've built my library of photo books and stuff behind me and gone really deep into the, collecting and stuff like that. But yeah, it's only really been the last 3 years or so. I hadn't had any influences through family or other things to kind of push me in that direction. It's I suppose my creative outlet outside work. I work for a big engineering company, so it's nice to have something that's a genuinely creative activity outside of like what's a fairly kind of regimented job, if you like, in terms of
Yeah, I
what I
can
do day
imagine.
to day. Yeah,
Though I find photography is like the sweet spot between like creativity and technicality, I find. But yeah, it's so you mentioned the books, and is it like because I also a collector kind more or less like I'm not I can't exit a bookshop or like a museum bookshop without buying anything. Is there like
yeah.
a specific school of photography or genre or
Uh,
artist
so it's
specifically?
Oh, I could spend the whole podcast just talking about photo books. I think.
That's fine. I don't
Yeah.
mind at all.
So in terms of some of my favourites, so Alex Webb for sure is a favourite of mine. So I've got a number of his books like Under a Grudging Sun and some of like the actual individual ones rather than the Suffering of Light, which is the kind of monograph. There's stuff like that. Whereas then there's things like Gilles Perez, who did Telex Iran, which is amazing. So he's a Magnum photographer, but he took pictures during the Iranian Revolution and they were smuggling the film out and things like that to be able to do it. It's an incredible book. It's not easy to get hold of now, but it's a really good one. Konstantin Manos, who died recently, his American Colors 1 and 2, they're both really really outstanding. But then you've got other things that like there's a guy called Chris Killip who might not be that familiar to your listeners, but he's a contemporary of Martin Parr in the UK, and he did a lot of documentary based black and white work, and he'd use a large format camera. But he would like live in a community for a year and really get himself into the life of that place and he captured a period of time that doesn't exist anymore. So things like the big shipbuilding cities of the northeast in the UK when they used to do a lot of heavy industry and they don't do any of that anymore, the coal mining industry that doesn't exist anymore, and the strikes that happened in the 1970s and 80s. So there's a really interesting documentary work that he does, but still, wide angle, like layered compositionally, but really trying to capture moments and stuff as well. So, I mean, that's to name a few, but yeah, I really enjoy it. I use it as my main source of inspiration other than, say, Instagram. I think it's too easy on Instagram to become a pastiche of other people's work that you find interesting. So, for inspiration purposes, I tend to always prefer to buy a book or something like that, and then you can learn from people who genuinely are masters in the space to do it. I find that much more, I don't know, and thought provoking than perhaps just scrolling down a feed in Instagram where every other thing is an advert these days.
Mm,
So it's
true.
so yeah,
Yeah, I also think like Instagram is not it's good for like one-offs. I mean, you can post like multiple photos in one, but I mean like in a book you have like a deep dive into either an entire work of a photographer or in a specific subject, which kind of enhances the photos, I think. So I think it's more interesting to use books for inspiration than
yeah.
single photos. So I noticed like did that most of the books you mentioned I think were in black and white, but I don't see any of your work in black and white, I think.
No, so some of them. I mean, Alex Webb's very like color based as a photographer. Constantine Manos is also known
Oh,
for his
okay.
color work as well. Gilles Perez, Telex Ran's black and white from the time, and Chris Kidd as well as black and white. But then you've got things like Martin Parr, The Last Resort, which is a great book. His kind of classic from New Brighton. But yeah, I mean it's a real rabbit hole. I mean everything from like Jeff Mermelstein, Sidewalk I've got over there. There's like loads of books like that. It's really interesting because street photography is such a broad church. I don't kind of limit myself to just I only like X, for example, is an area. if it's good work, it's good work. It doesn't really matter whether it's, strong color based or documentary based or anything else. If it's interesting, then yeah, I'll pick it up. But it's yeah, but I would say I predominantly shoot in color, like you say. I've experimented a little bit in black and white, but I'm not a monochrome based shooter. I don't really see the world like that. I see it more as a color wheel than you know high contrast black and white type shadows.
I had it this week because it was really bad weather, and it just worked better for the place I was in. But usually I'm also more color based, yeah. But sometimes black and white just slips in for a second, and then while I'm editing, I was annoyed like, why is this all black and white? But yeah, so it's familiar. So you mentioned Martin Parr, and I know you met him. I think there's a photo of you too,
Yeah,
so you
he
definitely
was
met
the
him.
yeah, he was the lead judge at the Dublin Street Photography Festival, which I mean, just a shout out to Paul and Des who run that festival. They've done a fantastic job. It's only their second year of running it, and the level of organisation and people involved in the festival is fantastic. Sometimes you see the festivals, you don't really understand where the money's gone, perhaps for the photo competition. They're
Yeah,
charging X amount for the photos, but for this one, they had, a bunch of different talks from people. They had organised walks that you could go on that was done through it. They had a really good exhibition that was on as well. The prizes were good. The judging panel was extremely strong. So they had Martin Parr as the lead judge. Lisa O'Shaughnessy was there as well from New York, and Rami Narula, who is based in, I think he's based in Thailand, who did a really good they did a book called Platform 10, which is just focused on one platform of a railway station in I think it's in Bangkok. An amazing piece of work, but they were all exhibiting there as well. But that's one of the things that made me even enter the competition was who the judging panel was and what it was about. So I mean, it was amazing, really. They had thousands of entries into the competition, and then they may have come to a shortlist and then given it to the judging panel. But to have Martin Parr pick Your Image as the winner is amazing. Probably is not. I don't think it's a hyperbole, but Martin's probably the greatest living UK photographer. He's a member of Magnum
I
for
think that's a safe
20,
bet to
30
say. Yeah,
years.
yeah,
He's done,
definitely.
how many hundreds of photo books, etc. So to even have him A, see your work and then B, pick it out amongst all of them is pretty amazing. So that was the biggest thing for me. The nicest thing actually was I had my family with me. So I've got a 6-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son, and my wife was there. They got to see me get the award as well, which is really nice because my daughter's just started showing an interest in photography as well. So it was really nice for her to see it and see that you can do something with that as well. So that was really nice. That was what made it. But yeah, incredible meeting Martin and having him look and judge your work. It was really cool.
Because I saw the photo of you two together, and of course the photo that won, which is I think like you I was you're wow, I'm falling over my words. You already were on my list to contact for the podcast, but I didn't know you won the contest with the photo, but I just saw the photo pass me by on Instagram. I was like, this is amazing. I need to get back to him. And then I found that you were already on my list, so I made work of actually contacting you.
Okay.
And then I saw that you actually won a contest with it. But also when I dove a bit deeper, when you agreed to this conversation, I started to doing like a deep dive research in your work. I noticed that there's like in color and in subject kind of similarity between you and Martin Parr. So in a way, it wasn't too surprising to me that he picked your photo. Of course, is it something you was he a big influence already, or and was he or in like a conscious influence to you, or
Yeah, somewhat. I think it's interesting because I think you can't be a British photographer and not be aware of Martin's work and what he's done over the years. And The Last Resort's a really amazing book. And so if any of the listeners don't have it, it's not very expensive. You can buy it on Amazon still, maybe for about £30 or something. But it's an amazing work because it shows the British seaside towns in the 1980s and what it was like then, and some of the images are really powerful. Um, so I think so. I think it's Martin's about showing, I suppose, I don't know, the how interesting life can be and the kind of slightly strangeness of life that you can
Yeah.
get, and so I think it probably spoke to him a little bit. I think that probably the main photographer compositionally that influenced me is probably someone like an Alex Webb or Nikos Economopoulos. I'm going to pronounce his name really badly. And again, another Magnum photographer, but with 28, 35 mil type lenses, quite complex leads, images, but you still have moments in there. It's not just about the composition; it's about something happening that's of interest. So yeah, I mean I was very lucky with the image. It was taken in Istanbul, and we walked past a food truck that was just handing out free donuts. So they're called lokma in Turkey, and they were kind of getting to the end, and that's where that moment happened, where you've got all these hands all over the place that are kind of reaching for the last one on there, and you all these nice things that come into play. I had one person comment on it and said it reminded them of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, where you've got the two hands kind of pointing at each other on
Ah,
the,
right. Yeah.
and so you've got that with the two hands reaching from the server and the person grabbing it, and then you've got these other hands kind of coming in. I quite like the look on the lady's face on the right. She looks very determined to get the donut over everyone else. But yeah, it all came together. I must have stood there for probably 10 minutes, and I was taking a variety of different. So if you looked at the contact sheet for that, if I was doing film, I probably would have blown through a whole roll of film, like taking different images. But it was waiting for those kind of moments to come together, because you could just see the hand reaching over the top. It's just really one of those split second things where you're shooting at 1/500th of a second and you're getting the hand just perfectly framed in the
Yeah.
sky and things like that. Yeah, it just all came together. It's just one of those moments where everything came together, but it did take a bit of working the scene from different angles and things like that to get to the final image, for
Yeah.
sure.
So you weren't there like for like 10 minutes shooting more or less the exact same shots, trying to have people.
Yeah,
You were
I kind of
really
walked
moving around. Yeah.
around and tried different angles and things like that, because yeah, it's interesting because I actually just got back from Istanbul again. I was in Istanbul last week, and I was on a workshop with Jonathan Jasberg, who's an amazing photographer. So again, if listeners haven't heard of him, his Instagram, I'm going to get it wrong. It's something like Seat 1A Flyer or something like that. And it's a really weird Instagram handle, but it's because he used to write a travel blog on air miles, and that's where the name came from.
Yeah.
But but his photography style's really like very aligned to mine. And one of the things I suppose learned off Jonathan is how to approach a scene and get people comfortable with your presence being there, not just dive in straight away with your camera, and take the time to be a part of the scene, and then you can tend to get much better photos because everyone relaxes around you and they're not really that interested in you anymore. It's one of the evolutions of my style, is I'm now a lot more comfortable like that, rather than, I don't know, walking past and just hip firing and walking off. Jonathan would describe that, I suppose, as a low percentage shot of you're likely to get anything good, as opposed to you stay in work and you let all the elements come together within a frame, if you like. So it's really interesting. I suppose that was probably one of the first ones for me, when it was a bit like that, where everyone was just ignoring me and getting on with their thing. But that's one of the things I picked up recently, is how to approach that and ways in which you can approach that. And I find that really interesting because it's a bit different to the usual walk down the street, bam, take an image and walk off quickly of something else. It's quite a different style to that, if you like.
Were you more of the, because for me it's I'm learning to slow down, as you said, and then working scenes more, and uh being slower and more mindful. Was it something you were at first as well? Like you were more of a fast paced.
Yeah, so I mean, we were having a brief chat before we started around this, but I probably went down a similar route of everyone else, where when you first start street photography, it can be a bit scary and confronting, right? You're going into public and you're taking pictures of people in public, And that's very unusual, right? You don't see many people walking around with a camera these days, particularly not where I live. Like, you don't see anyone walking around with a camera. You see people with phones, they might be taking video or pictures on the street, but not with a proper camera. Like, you don't
True, yeah.
really see that anymore. So until you've got your confidence up, when I first started shooting, I think one of the first lenses I bought was a 50 and an 85 mil, right? So you're kind of much further removed from people. That one of the first people I started seeing their work around was someone like Sol Leiter, who a lot of people follow in terms of his work. So it is a lot more suggesting of someone being there, and it's a longer lens, and the images are quite compressed, and it's more about the composition elements and things like that. So you might sit in a scene, fish, and wait for something to come into it. So I started off like that, but I've gradually got shorter and wider and wider and wider on my lens choices now, and it's taken me probably 2-3 years to get to that point where I'm now comfortable shooting with the 28 or the 35. So in Istanbul the other week, I only shot on 28. I didn't do anything on 35, for example. And the work I've done in India, most of that's on 28 as well, rather than 35. But I've got to a point where I'm more comfortable like that, and I'm kind of don't mind that people like, why is this weird guy walking around taking
Yeah.
pictures and stuff. But it's taken 3 years to get into that point, right? Which is almost the kind of, well, one of the things I've learned is if you approach it with positive body language and you're smiling, people know you're doing it, you're not trying to hide what you're doing or anything, then people are a lot more open to it than they would be if you were, I don't know, sat 10 meters away with a 70 to 200 mil lens on and you're like kind of sneaking around the corner taking pictures of people.
Yeah, it reads
You come
like
across a
paparazzi,
lot
yeah.
worse. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you come across a lot worse like that, I think. So, but it's taken a while to get to that point. And still, I find it more difficult in the UK. In some, like, I'd find it difficult in Cheltenham, other than the stuff you may have seen on my website that I do at the race course for the horse racing, and that is an environment where I get right in. And again, most of it's on the 28 again, and people don't mind in that environment. They're kind of used to pictures. Whereas if I walked along the street here, people would find it a bit more odd if I was kind of taking a picture in that environment. Whereas again, if you're somewhere like the race course or in London, people don't mind. You see tourists all the time with cameras. It's a bit different. But yeah, it's probably taken 2 to 3 years to learn how to approach things in a way that puts people at ease and get your confidence to a level where you don't mind being close to people. That's okay. I think my wife still finds it weird. She finds it weird if she's out and I'm taking pictures in that environment. But I'm kind of, it's okay now. It's got to
Because
that point.
she sometimes joins you, or no?
No, so it's pretty much a solo pursuit for me. So I will occasionally meet up with friends. There's a very good friend of mine who you might be aware of, called Tim Jameson, and he does a YouTube channel that's quite popular now. A very good photographer in his own right. He's used mainly on film. So Tim actually lives in Cheltenham as well. So it's quite
Ah, I thought it was
strange.
London based. Yeah.
He lives here with me. So because I moved to Cheltenham out of London, and then we just connected over Instagram because we saw each other on tags of things locally, and have started meeting. I'm actually meeting him tomorrow evening just to catch up because I haven't seen him for a while. But it's really nice because there's two of us here who live in a small town, and we're both have a very like strong passion for the same thing. So yes, it's nice having Tim locally as well. It means you don't have to go down to London all the time just to meet up with people, which is good.
Yeah. It's something I'm actually working on in my city as well, making like a little like casual community, like not something too rigid or something, but just to have
Yeah, it's
people
nice to
around. Yeah,
meet
which is
up for
nice.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I think it's nice if I go to meet people. I know I'm not really going to take pictures. I'm going more just to hang out and talk about photography and have a nice walk during the day. But if I'm going to take pictures, I tend to just do it on my own. But for a few reasons. One, because you don't feel like you're slowing anyone else down, or if you want to stay somewhere for ages, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's your own time. And I suppose the other thing is if you're going out with someone who's got a similar style to you, you're both kind of seeing similar things, and you're kind of tripping over each other a little bit on the same street. I've been on workshops before where you might be one of 4 or 5 people in a workshop, and because the person running the workshop kind of keeps you all together, you're all walking down the same street, you all see the same stuff, and you're all just tripping over each other. And I think that's it's a bit confronting. It's really nice to hang out and meet people. And what I found, the festivals are really good. So, the Dublin one was brilliant. I met loads of people there who I'd only met on Instagram before, so it was nice to meet people in real life. And there's one going on in Brussels at the moment this week. There's a lot of
Yeah,
stuff on
I'm going there
Instagram
tomorrow.
about.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of those. So I think those are great. There was one in Oslo last week, I think, as well. There was so those are really good. I think that if you've got the time to go to one, I'd definitely encourage people to go, because you meet a lot of people, and it's all people who are like-minded and share similar interests to you, and it's a nice way to connect with people. But trying to create a little community, wherever you are. I think it's really positive. You'd be surprised how many people actually do have similar interests to you in the area you might live in, but you don't know unless you put yourself out there to
No,
meet people,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. That's also why I started this podcast, because it was like every street photographer does this alone. It's as you said, like
Yeah,
you want to be in the focus, you want to focus, you don't want to bother anyone, you don't want to slow down anyone. So we all do this alone, but we all also like to talk about it a lot, and we all like to share our thoughts and our visions and everything. And we all have questions for each other as well. So I figured like there should be a way to do this, and podcast seems
yeah. It's a good medium for it.
yeah, it's a good medium for it. So I think that's why I love. I feel like the street photography festivals are popping up everywhere. As you said, like Dublin is only 2 years. I couldn't imagine it if that it's only 2 years, but I know Brussels now is 9 years or something. So it's like a
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
fairly new thing, I think, to make like community around street photography, at least, because street photography is very old. Um, but yeah, to me, it's nice, and it's fun that even in a smaller town like Cheltenham, there's talented people like you and Tim. So it's yeah, amazing. Wait, Tim Jameson? Yeah, that's
Yeah, Tim Jameson. Yeah.
always get his name wrong.
Yeah. And his YouTube channel is very good. So for anyone interested in a good
I
YouTube
can
channel,
recommend it.
as long as you're English speaking, it's very good. Like what the content he does.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a nice community in the UK. I mean, I don't know if you have the same in Belgium. There's quite a few photographers based in Belgium I'm connected with through Instagram. But yeah, there's a nice scene. There's the guys who run Frame Lines magazine, who you might have seen, Josh Ed Goose, who's Spicy Meatball on Instagram, and then Shane Taylor. They've developed a community in the UK now where they've got a quarterly zine that comes out. They do monthly photo assignments that people submit their work to, and then they pick ones they like and they get published, or they talk about them on their YouTube channel. And they'll do regular meetups and things like that. So it's really nice. There's some guys who've come out of that who now are running like exhibitions, and they're getting people who like work might not have been seen before, and they're doing it through that, and it's really built some momentum. If people aren't doing it, wherever you listen to this, I would encourage you to like think about how you could, because you never know who you're going to meet unless you put yourself out there to do it. So it's great. There's a really strong community now on the Frameline stuff, where it's even got a private Discord where people will share work or have like talk about stuff, or they might be sharing something, or even locations to go and shoot, etc. So it's yeah, it's really nice. So yeah, I think that's a really good part of it, is to have the community around it, as well as the solo pursuit, like you say, of actually going out and taking photos. The community aspects of it are really positive.
exactly. So to get back to your work and not like street photography in general. So you mentioned the Cheltenham races, and there's like two questions I have around it. So first of all, did you know about those events, or were you like regularly visiting it already, or was it totally new to you, or what made
Yeah,
you
so
choose it as a
it
subject?
I think it was just coming back to the Martin Parr stuff. Like, one of the things he was saying in Dublin was project-based work, and I think that's one of the things that I've started to understand. So instead of just going out during the day and trying to get one shot you think might people might like on Instagram, I've kind of moved away from that now to say, okay, well, what's something that other people might find interesting that has more, I don't know, more weight to it. So something that could become potentially a book or a magazine, or get published in some way or exhibited in some way. And so I started to have a think about, well, what could you do locally? And I'm quite lucky in Cheltenham in that in the UK, Cheltenham has a horse racing festival every year that takes place in March, and it runs for 4 or 5 days. And over the 4 or 5 days, they'll have best part of 300,000 people attend the races. So it's a really big event. It's like one of the biggest ones in the UK. But the horse racing starts in October, and then it kind of goes every month up until the festival in March, and that's the kind of end of the horse racing season. So it kind of goes over the winter. So, every like Saturday where it's on, you go along, and there'll be 60, 70,000 people there like on a day, and you've got every different type of person you could think of, like, so young people who just want to go and enjoy themselves and are out drinking. You've got old people who are really serious and into the racing. And one of the things you probably noticed in the photos, there's quite a unique dress sense to the people, what they're wearing. Like, you'll get people wearing 1950s style hats. They'll wear these like tweed coats and countryside coats. They'll carry binoculars with them to watch the horse racing. And so you see this dress code that maybe in 20 years will go, because the horse racing establishment removed the dress code. So if you went back 20 years, like in the 1980s, everyone would have been dressed like that. But now, to encourage more young people to go, they've said, well, it doesn't matter, you can wear what you want now. So it's only really the older people who still wear that type of stuff. But it just struck me, it's one of those places where you see every human emotion happening. You see people having fun and going out drinking, and they don't mind, and they're just having a good time. You see people who are really seriously gambling, and they're either really happy afterwards or they're really sad afterwards. And you just see nice moments where people from different social classes are really bonding over the same thing, and you just see this range of emotions happening all around you, which is pretty amazing, really. And because everyone's there to have a good time, no one minds like being pictures, because there's people there taking pictures of the sport of the horse racing, and they're taking pictures of the horses. But one of the things that struck me is no one's taking pictures of the people, right? So there's no one there doing what I'm doing there. There's people working for the horse racing magazines who might take, a picture of someone who's the best dressed person on the day, or, whatever. But there's not anyone there taking pictures of someone tearing up their betting ticket and throwing it on the floor and walking off
The
or
actual
anything.
stories, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's why it struck me as a really interesting project. So I've been going there for probably 2 years now. And you may have seen off my website, I'm a pro member of the Raw Society as well. And through the Raw Society, I've been able to get hold of a press pass. So I now can attend as effectively a press photographer, but I don't take any images that I'm selling to magazines or anything. I'm building a body of work around it. And I will have an article in the next Raw Society magazine that's coming out. When will it come out? Probably in the autumn, I think, is the next one that's going to get published. And there'll be a kind of short version of the project I'm working on in the magazine.
Yeah.
So there'll be
Okay,
a
nice,
story-based article and a series of pictures as well. But it's a great place to go and take pictures, because no one minds you taking pictures there, and you get some really interesting subjects and things going on. So
Yeah.
that's why at the start I said street and documentary, because I consider that more almost documentary based work. You're still effectively out on a street in inverted commas taking pictures of people in a candid way, but it's more documenting life and the project and the subject of what you're taking the pictures on, if you like. So that's why I've started doing that.
That's a nice segue, because that was actually my second question. Where does the border between street and documentary lay for you? Also, because it's of course there's like a big vague zone, I can imagine, because as you said, like a lot of the street photography is documenting live on the street, so it's kind of like documentary, but at the same time this is also a bit of street photography to me. So it's yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think because I've got a young family and I've got a 6-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son, I don't have a lot of spare time, right, to go and take pictures. And then it was interesting. I've heard other people talk about this who've got children now. So what I tend to do is instead of going to London on a Saturday and like randomly walking around all day and then coming back, it's a very low, that's a very low percentage play for me to spend my time for a day because my time away is so precious. I would rather go, right, I'm going to go to the races for a day, spend a day there, and I know I'm going to build more content for a body of work or for anything else. So when you go to take pictures of events, particularly, I'd still apply the same principles I'd use for street photography, but I'm doing it in more a way to document the events that I'm going to go and take pictures of. So it might be a protest or a horse racing event, or there's another project. I haven't started it yet, but it's one I'm thinking of where there's a place near here that's suffering from a lot of over tourism and it's becoming quite a big issue because it's known as this place of outstanding beauty, but they're just bussing people in all the time. There's everyone trying to take a million selfies there and stuff for Instagram. And that's another type of project you could do, right? It's a bit like in Belgium where if you go to Bruges or somewhere, there'll be tourists all over the place, right?
Bruges immediately sprang to mind. Yeah.
So it's the same kind of principle, but you don't realise there's necessarily stories there because if you start to think about it, we've got how are the people living there feeling about that? What's it? How is it impacting them? What are all the tourists up to? How is it impacting them? Is it having an impact on the environment around there? And is that something that needs to be captured as well? So there's projects you can kind of think of anywhere, but that's where I'd see the substitute. Street to me is I'm just on the street. It's not a planned event or anything like that. It's just stuff that's randomly happening around me that might be happening. Whereas documentary tends to me is more around an event or something else that's happening that I'm documenting or a project that I'm documenting specifically around the body of work I'm trying to create, if you like. That's to me how I define it. But a lot of the time now for me, it's probably more documentary based unless I've traveled somewhere to go and take pictures, like when I was in Istanbul the other week, where it's, I suppose, building a body of work around Istanbul that could become a project, but I'm spending time there just purely doing street photography. I'm not going there for an event that's happening in Istanbul, if you like, while I'm there. So that's how I'd see the difference between the two,
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. I don't think there's a specific right or wrong answer, but I just noticed because it's on your website and I was more asking myself, maybe is this still street photography or not? And I just thought maybe that's a question I should
Yeah,
read to you.
that's why I've kind of separated the bits out, if you like, on the website, as you can see, because the Cheltenham racing work is its own thing on there, as opposed to it being mixed, blended in with the other stuff, if you like.
Makes total sense. Yeah. And so it's in all of your photos, not only the Cheltenham photos, but there's specifically as well. There's a certain proximity between you and the subject, and I don't only mean it's physically, like you're physically close to them, but also it's the photos feel intimate.
Yeah.
Is that something you do consciously? Is it something you more feel? Is it something you train on? It's how did that's or how do you think that came about?
I think it's, I suppose one of the things I'd like to try and convey is that it makes you feel like you're part of the scene. It's not like I'm an observer and I'm so far away, it feels like there's a distance between me and the subject or something else that's going on. And I think that, I never want to do it to the point where I'm like Bruce Gilden walking around flashing people right
Yeah,
next to them, right? So
that's
it's
one
done in a,
extreme. Yeah,
yeah, hopefully it's done in a way that's got what's the right word, respect for the subjects, if you like, and it's done with from a positive place. So I'm not never trying to show anyone in a bad light or anything like that. It's trying to convey a sense of feeling or place from being there, and it feels like you're there, right? So if you're quick and you can be in and out of a scene, you can get very close to people. People don't even realize you're there, right? You can just, if you're going into the scene or the group of people, and you know kind of what photo you want to take, you can kind of be ready to take that type of photo, be in and out quite
Yeah.
quickly, and people don't even notice. They don't react to you, right? So that's the nice thing. There's one you might have seen on my website, which is there's a girl running towards me, and the thing that drew me to the scene was the goat coming out of the doorway, and it's on the main page of my website, but it's on there also the India page as well, and that's a really nice scene because you feel like she's almost running straight towards you, and she's got this big smile on her face, and their sisters are chasing her down this alleyway, and then you've got these boys walking the other way, and then just to one side you've just got this goat coming out of someone's house that's tethered to it, and all the colours kind of work, and it's nice. I suppose it's that kind of thing always quite speaks to me. It gives you that feeling of you can feel something through the photo rather than it's just compositionally strong or whatever else. I think it adds an extra layer to the photo. If you can convey a sense of feeling from it, or you feel like you're really there, I think is really interesting. There's just coming back to that Gilles Perez book, there's a photo he takes there where it's really interesting. I hadn't seen a photo like it before. It's probably been copied a lot now, but he was taking a picture of a meeting of all these elders of kind of Iranian elders, and they're all wearing like their form of headdress. But the way he took the picture was he's almost like on top of the guy's head. So the guy's leading the meeting. You see the top of his head kind of pushing down into it. So if you search like Gilles Perez Telex Iran, you'll be able to find the image. But it's a really powerful photo because it really feels you're there. It feels like you're the guy, like talking to all this room of other people. But it's it's a really powerful image. Stuff like that, I think, is really interesting. There's some Alex Webb work that's like that as well. The one with there's a really famous one, which is the blue and white one with the kid with the ball spinning on his finger and everything's kind of blue and white, and there's a basketball going in the background and stuff like that. But it feels like you're really there. Like I think that kind of lifts photos beyond just I don't know, something that's positioned nicely in the frame or whatever. It's just purely an aesthetic thing. It takes it to another level beyond that. I think personally. So.
And do you feel that it's not purely photographic, of course, because otherwise everyone would be able to copy it. Is it because you yourself are really into the Cheltenham races, or is there specifically for this project, maybe it's easier to talk about it like that, or is it because you care about the subject, or is it because how do you think it happens that
Yeah, so the Cheltenham races one's interesting because I think it started out as hey, you're missing an opportunity that's literally on your doorstep. Like I can walk there in 35 minutes and I'm in the race course, right? So it's like, why am I missing this opportunity? Like not everyone has this on their doorstep. It'll be the same for you, I'm sure. There'll be something unique to where you live that I'd go, wow, that's crazy. I've never seen that before. That would be really interesting as a body of work, right? But as I've got more into it, that's where you start to see stories unfold beyond it, if you like, because there's a few ways of thinking about it. That one is you're capturing something that won't be there in the future. So people who, might be children now, like maybe they're, I don't know, a teenager now, by the time they get to my age, it will look totally different. All those older people who dress a certain way, they'll have all passed away by that point. It won't look the same anymore. It'll be different. And one of the things that I've started to notice is this interplay between different societal classes that are there. So the people who are there, the older people, they're the ones who own the horses. They're very wealthy. They've got a certain way of dressing and a certain way of carrying themselves. And then you've got the younger people of today who don't have the same money as them, and they're just there to have a good time. But ultimately, when the race starts, none of it matters. You see them hugging each other, or they're all in it together, and it brings people together. And it's only through going there that I started noticing that type of stuff. And I suppose you just kind of hone your observation skills a bit more because you're kind of looking out for certain things, or for example, we're doing this podcast with headphones in. I never wear headphones at all when I'm taking photos, because you want to be able to hear what's happening and then you can react to that on the street. The same with that. So I think it's interesting. I think you start out perhaps with an idea for a project, and then once you start to understand the subject better, it can move in different directions, if you like. I think that's what I've found. So I'm interested to start the project about that kind of over tourism thing, because I don't know where that's going to go. It might become a very different thing to what I thought it was going to be. But I'm trying to think of things that are unique to perhaps the area I'm living in that haven't been documented, or if they have been documented, they've been documented in a one-dimensional way, perhaps by just a sports photographer taking pictures of horses jumping over fences, right, as opposed to what else is going on. Or people going to that place, or saying like a Bruges, and they're just taking pictures of the architecture or what it looks like and selling that in a book about Bruges and saying, look at all these nice buildings. But they're not talking about how the over tourism is maybe impacting the space, or what that's doing to the city and the residents living there and stuff like that. So you can find those stories anywhere. I think it's just you've got to start, I suppose, thinking about things perhaps slightly differently, like how you approach photography. That's why I think it's I don't know, it's such a open-ended topic. You can make great photography about anything, right? Really, it doesn't, and
Very
it doesn't
true,
have
yeah.
to have people in necessarily either. To still be something documenting something, or something on the street as well. There's an Australian photographer called Jesse Marlowe. I don't know if you've seen any of his work. It's really good. I'm aware of him because he's from Melbourne, which is where my wife's from. But he's a Leica ambassador and stuff, so he does a lot of really great work. But some of his books, they don't have people in every image, right? But they're still a really strong body of work when you look at it all together. The same with a lot of Trent Park's work, which again is another amazing photographer. Like, his black and white work's incredible, but not all of it's people. And if it is people, it might be very grainy or like purposefully quite abstract imagery. So it doesn't really matter. It's kind of what you push the genre to. To be honest, there's your own creativity around it, I suppose.
It's very true, yeah. That's what I like about street photography as well, because you can have so many different subjects in so many different styles. But also, if I will join you to the Cheltenham races, we'll probably have such different
Yeah, very
results.
different photos.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah,
that's something very nice. I very much like the idea of the over tourism project, by the way. It's because it's something I read about it a lot, usually about places in Spain. But I think it's a very interesting project to actually show what is over tourism, why is it so annoying. So yeah, I think that yeah, I'd be
yeah.
definitely looking forward to
You could
that.
definitely do it in Bruges. I was in Bruges a year or
Maybe, yeah.
so ago, and it's just full of tourists. It's so but there'll be stuff like that everywhere, right? There's last weekend in Cheltenham, there was an event that happened just outside, and I don't know if you'd be aware of it in Belgium, but it's it's so strange. It's called cheese rolling. So I don't know if you've heard of this, right? So they have this really big hill, and the idea is you get this big wheel of cheese, and they roll the cheese down the hill, and the competition is who can catch the cheese, right? So that's the thing. And people run down this hill really fast, and they break legs, and they're tumbling over each other, and it's really dangerous. But they've been doing this for like I don't know how long it's been going for, but a very long time. But that's like this one really weird event that happens every year on the same weekend on this one place. But it gets the BBC coming to cover it and stuff like that. But again, they only just cover the bit where the cheese rolls downhill. They don't cover the bits of who are the competitors and what are they doing in the build up to the race, and what happens to them afterwards, and how they're celebrating afterwards, and what else is going on around the event. So I'm sure everyone's got something like that near them that to you would find really interesting, but to people living here, they'd be like, "Oh, that just happens every year."
Yeah,
It's
true,
just
yeah.
normal. So that's what I find interesting with the going beyond just the pure street elements, is that you can find stuff that people might disregard but are actually really interesting or have a lot of value. I suppose that's why my bookcases end up being part documentary, part like more traditional street based work. Because if you look at Alex Webb's work, it's typically of a place. It's not of an event or of a thing, if you like. So he'll do a book on Istanbul, or do a book on, the Caribbean or somewhere else, right? But it's something of a place, and it's usually just a series of very good individual images. They don't tell a story altogether. They're typically just very good one-off images. Whereas then you've got like a Martin Parr book, which is of a place, but it's telling a story of the place, which is quite different again, if you like. So that's why I suppose I'm influenced by both, if you like, in terms of the way my work's gone. But,
Yeah, I think it's good to have multiple influences and not just copy one photographer.
for sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking because you haven't been doing street photography for that long, 3 years, more or less,
Yeah,
or
about 3 years. Yeah,
yeah. And did you do like the other photography regularly in it before that, or
not really. It was more taking pictures when I went on holiday, like to do it. And if I look back on the stuff I was doing 3 years ago, it's funny how you can evolve quite quickly, if you like, because it wasn't very good. Stuff I was doing 3 years ago, is with a long lens. None of it's really on Instagram anymore. My stuff on Instagram is like over the last probably 18 months or so, I'd say, and the same with the stuff on my website. But it's interesting because one of the things I find with photography is you can evolve quite quickly. You get this like really rapid progression because you're like, oh, that's very different to taking a picture of my camera phone or something, and I can now work out how to use manual settings on my camera, or I can now shoot with a really low aperture and blur the whole background out and look at that, and so you start off doing that kind of stuff. But what the things how I evolved has been through, I suppose, and I'd say this to everyone, it's easy looking back on it. So if I knew 3 years ago what I know today, I'd tell myself, don't worry about gear or lenses or that kind of stuff, right? There's a friend of mine called Eduardo Ortiz, who you may know
yeah,
through Instagram. A brilliant photographer. He uses a really beaten up Fuji X Pro 2 with really old lenses on it and stuff, and takes incredible images, right? So you don't need to worry about that. So that's probably something I would have told myself 3 years ago: is don't worry about gear. It's not a key thing. Save your money and spend it on experiences or workshops. So spend it on travel or going and doing workshops with photographers that you find really inspiring to you. So I've done a lot of international based workshops now. So I think I've done three internationally. So I've done one in Calcutta and two in Istanbul, which have been really good. And then I've done a few in the UK. So I did one with Matt Stewart in the UK, which is really interesting. But you can kind of take something from all of them, and that's one of the things I found has accelerated things more, and particularly the international ones have been really interesting because you're spending like 5 days with someone in their presence and you can't help but learn or pick things up in that environment, and you've got 5 days of solidly shooting to practice and try things out, and you're not there necessarily to take amazing photos that might end up in a book or something. You're there just to practice and learn and stuff like that. That for me, I think, has accelerated me the most. But then also trying different things like shooting at a race course or going on the street or not doing the same thing every time or exposing yourself to new environments. And I think that's been the thing that's accelerated my journey the quickest. Because it hasn't been that long that I've been shooting this style of photography for sure. And 3 years ago, I was terrible, right? If I showed you some of my images from 3 years ago, they were awful. Um, but yeah, I think you can progress relatively rapidly, but I think you need to just keep pushing yourself to learn more and stuff like that. There's another photographer I'd love to do one of his workshops called Magic Dakovic, and he's a Polish photographer. He's done a couple of books, one which was of the city where I went to university in Cardiff, and he does these amazing workshops in places like Dhaka in Bangladesh, and he goes all over the place. But again, very he's got a book that came out through iShot, which is also really good. But he's does very like moment based, compositionally strong, wide lens, like 28-35 mil type photos. a bit like Jonathan Jasberg again, but really good, really strong work. But he predominantly just teaches now. That's all he does. But his style's great. So yeah, the more workshops you can do, the more you can learn off others that whose style you resonate with. I think that's really interesting. But the one thing I caution people on is make sure you book a workshop with people who are actually going to be out on the street with you and show you what they're doing. Because while I was in Istanbul, there were two Magnum photographers doing classes there. Like Harry Gruat was there, who's obviously, probably Belgium's most famous
he's from around my
photographer.
corner, yeah. He's
Yeah.
from around here, yeah.
So he was there, and I think just before Georgi Pinkasov was there as well. So they had like two very well-known Magnum photographers who were there at the same time. I'm not sure if this was the case for Harry and Georgi's workshops, so I don't want to do them a disservice, but some of the very famous photographers, you pay a lot of money to go on the workshop, but they don't spend a single minute with you out on the street. They will send you out for the day and say, come back with 10 images. They'll look at it in the evening, and then they'll just send you out on your own again during the day. So you don't get the value of seeing how they might approach a scene, or they
Which
could
is
just talk
the
to you.
most interesting part, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing for me is the workshops I've gone on, I've had recommendations from other people who've been on them, so I knew kind of what to expect from it. But that's the ones where I think you get the real value is you literally walking down the street with someone else and they're going, that's interesting to me. Here's how I'd get into that scene. Here's how I'd set it up compositionally. Here's the kind of elements I'd be looking for to make this interesting, or wait for this type of moment to occur. And that's the bit where I think you learn the most for sure.
Exactly, yeah.
Is that kind of approach to things.
Exactly. It seems like you're very conscious about your growth and your decisions in photography. So that's something. Well, I don't dislike people who don't do that because I think there's also a part of instinct and after some kind of feeling to it. But to me, I'm more of a I'm not gonna say overthinker, but I'm also like always thinking like, is this right? Should I do it more like this? I'm very conscious as well, so it's nice to have that represented
Yeah.
in another
Well,
photographer.
it's interesting because I've had two quite different workshops in Istanbul. So the first one I did was with Eduardo a year ago, and
Okay, nice, yeah.
Eduardo, he's from South America, right? So he's from Chile, and his style probably orientates to his background, right? So he's a lot more free, I suppose, in the way he would approach photography, which is also really interesting. So he has a similar approach to how he approaches people and gets himself into a scene and kind of becomes part of the scene. Up until it was funny when I first met him, he was like, "Did you used to shoot landscapes?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Well, everything you take is completely straight. Like everything's straight. Like these lines are straight and the horizon's straight." One of the things I learned off Eduardo is that doesn't actually matter, right? It doesn't matter, right? You can actually add dynamism into a scene by just slightly tilting your camera right. So you don't overdo it, but it's just enough where if you've got a kid running or someone jumping for a pigeon or something else, if it's always flat, it doesn't feel as dynamic as just having a little bit of a tilt on it. And it's stuff like that where I was always quite rigid, and I was always like looking for these perfect lines and having, something following a pattern on the screen. I was thinking too much about placing things along the rule of thirds or whatever. None of that really matters, right? You can't be moment is always going to be composition for stuff, right? 9 times out of 10. Just being freer with how I approach things. I got that from Eduardo, right? And I never used to do that before. And then with Jonathan, probably the biggest learning with Jonathan was how he interacts with people, which is really interesting, right? And so he will go to the extent of learning certain phrases that people he'll be able to say in a local language. So whether it was being like Flemish for yourself or French or Dutch, for example, but something that as a tourist you wouldn't say, right? So and the phrase I learned for Turkish was a phrase which is, I'm going to pronounce this really badly, is kolay gelsin, and it literally means have an easy day at work. right? So
Oh,
if you say that to someone in the shop or something, they start smiling instantly because one, it's a nice thing to say to someone, and two, they never would expect someone who's from the UK to say say that to them. One of the things I learned from Jonathan was you build a rapport with someone in the scene who becomes your ally or friend in that environment. If anyone says, "Oh, I don't want so and so there," they go, "No, no, he's okay. He's okay. You know, he said Kalai Gelson to me. He's a nice guy, right?" And that was something I learned from Jonathan. Again, was like, well, how do you put yourself in a scene, make people comfortable with you being there before you even get your camera out? And that was probably one of the biggest things I took away from that one was how would you approach that and what type of things would you say to people? And that's not even really photography. That's just social interaction and other things with people. So I just find it really interesting. So for people I've found who I like their work, it's nice to understand how they approach it, what they do. But you can take something from everyone. So I'm probably like my style is now like a component part of lots of people who I've been lucky enough to spend some time with. But you can learn something from everyone, right? So
yeah.
it's
I
yeah,
think that's the way to go indeed. Like from books or from workshops, like pick the things that interest you from people and combine it to make yourself. That's, I think,
yeah, for
very
sure,
well.
yeah.
So yeah, I see we're an hour in, so I'm gonna wrap it up because I
Wow,
try
that's
to
gone
keep
quickly.
it. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I started to aim for 1 hour because I have episodes of like an hour and a half, and I got messages telling me it's just too long. So I'm trying to keep it to an hour. So thank you, Tom, for your time and insights.
Oh,
Plenty
thank you
of
for inviting
insights.
me.
I think we could do like another one in a year or so and have
Oh, for
totally new
sure. We do
conversation.
one
I
just on
think.
photo books.
Yeah, exactly. And if anyone wants to follow Tom, of course, his links are in the description. So to his website and to his Instagram. Make sure to follow his fantastic work, and I'm sure more will follow. Also, make sure to follow the podcast on your favorite platform and follow me on social media for updates about new episodes. And again, all the links for that are in the description. So see you in the next episode, and thank you, Tom.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having me.